Welcome back to In Conversation. This is a series I do where I talk with different writers from all different backgrounds about a variety of topics. And today I'm talking with Gabby about writing own voices stories or writing from your own culture. And I'm going to let Gabby introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Gabriela Martins, but you can call me Gabby. I'm a writer and I'm a linguist as well.
Yes, which is exciting. I went to school for linguistics and I've forgotten everything. So I'm sure you know
here I was
more than me by now.
Thinking we could nerd it out on linguistics. Okay, I'll get over it.
I've forgotten so much. I've been out of school for like 7 years. I remember nothing. So
that's fair. I don't remember most of what I learned there. Like I just remember what I actually use in my day-to-day. So it's fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's because I didn't use it in day-to-day. I went into social media and writing, and so that's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I was like my major, let's say, it doesn't really work like that in Brazil, but let's say that my major was in like teaching languages and linguistics, so I could really use both of them together. So it was great.
Oh, that's very good. That's very nice. So we're talking about own voices stories today. So I will very loosely define this for the audience in case you haven't ever heard of it. Own voices or writing own voices stories essentially means that you are writing a story from your own perspective, in that your marginalizations match the ones of your character. And sometimes I find this is a little bit loose because it doesn't necessarily need to be every single marginalization you have matching the character exactly. Sometimes it's one or two, sometimes it's a few, but not all. But essentially, you're bringing your own culture and your own experience and your own identity to the characters and to the story in an intimate way. Would you say,
Yeah.
do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I would like to add that, we're writing from our experience, but also if you have, if you've been interacting with horses in your horse ride, and you write a story about horse riding, that's not own voices. Yeah. You're just writing from your experience, knowing a lot about horses and horse riding. So this thing that I think sometimes we have to be careful about own voices is that because it's a term that has been attracting more attention lately, and we're going to talk about that today as well. Some people try to profit off of it by misusing that label. So when we say own voices, we mean we're writing from an experience that, while great, may have caused us pain in some way. It's something that is a marginalization, like you said, right? It's not just an experience. I can't write a linguist on voices story just because I've studied. That's not really a marginalization. It's just a thing I know about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the term was meant to help marginalized authors get their stories telling about marginalized identities out there to wider audiences and to promote those stories. It's not a buzzword to just kind of jump on and like figure out how you can shoehorn yourself into it because you feel like there's a certain amount of clout to using that term and you want to take advantage of that. That's really not what the term was meant to do, and that wasn't really the purpose of it.
And the purpose was really to differentiate those stories that come from a place of experience, because they are richer. If I write a story about a Black teenager, I have never had the experiences of a Black teenager. So although I can do my research and get sensitivity readers, I can do a respectful job, I will never be talking from a place of experience. I will never know what it's like to be a Black teenager. However, I can talk about being a Latina teenager because I have had that experience. So I love that this term exists because it really empowers this idea of, telling our stories. Can you see my cat? Just like
I saw a tail. I saw something.
Living her best life behind me, to the window and back. She's very interested in discussion as well.
Oh man, yeah. I think those are definitely like very poignant points, and that really does kind of get to that core of what the term is about, especially like from like a research point of view, like looking at statistics and publishing and that sort of thing. There's a lot of help in using the term own voices to help people find stories that are belonging in that way to the person that's writing them, so that we can help promote those stories more. Because a lot of the time in publishing, what will happen is we'll notice that people that are writing about their own voices experience aren't actually getting promoted as much as people from other identities writing about that same experience. And so it's
not that we have, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Not that we have a recent example of that or anything, right?
Yeah, no recent examples of people profiting other the stories of others.
No,
Well, people whose story that is get no recognition.
No. It's like just something that we're thinking about like randomly and stuff.
Just hasn't come up at all. Oh gosh.
No, like never in the history of publishing, but most importantly, not recently, because we are in 2020 and we wouldn't think that people would still put non-own voices before own voices, especially when talking about very specific experiences, right?
Yeah, that's what you'd hope.
Yeah, let's
deep sigh.
Yeah, like as a Latina, that is something that has been on my mind lately.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go ahead and just say we're talking about American Dirt. It's not in my age category, so I don't feel bad, and I wouldn't have felt bad anyway.
Yeah, I think that that's not exactly what we meant, like what we put in the topics of things we would talk about, but I think it comes up naturally. I think it's very, very upsetting because this author, she's not only profiting from an experience that isn't hers, she is attempting and most sadly becoming the voice to go to for that. I think that when we talk about own voices, especially POC, writing other POC, I don't think it's a bad thing to write a story that's not from your perspective. One example of someone who has done that wonderfully for an upcoming book. So the Hannah Wars is coming out in, I always got March and May confused. I think it's May.
I always say 2020.
Yeah, it's a 2020 release, right? Yeah. And it's a story about a Bangladeshi girl, so that's the main character, but her love interest is Brazilian. And as a Brazilian, I loved that story. Even though she's Afro-Latina and I'm not, I identified so much with her. There was so much of my culture that was on the page. And so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but you see that story, it's a rom-com told by a Bangladeshi perspective, which by the way is an own voices story. It's not the same as the author writing a story about what it's like to being a Brazilian first-generation immigrant in Ireland and experiencing the racism that comes from being also a Black girl. And you know what I mean?
It's a very specific story, and it's incorporating many times in some way that certain identities, like a level of pain. And there's that issue of profiting from someone else's pain. And that's the big thing.
What American Dirt has done so differently than, for example, the Hannah Wars, is that it's a story about immigrant pain, about immigrant Latinx pain. It's not a story about a family and then one aspect of the story is that they happen to be Latinx and they happen to be immigrants. I'm not an immigrant, so I'm not talking, this is not a story that I feel like I could have written. I'm Latina, but I'm not an immigrant. I couldn't do it justice. This is not my experience. This is not my voice.
Yeah.
I think especially because we don't have a mainstream book that reached all the shelves that was already like that. We just don't have one that is on voices. So for the author of American Dirt to come and take that spot, that is especially hurtful, because if someone who has actually had that experience writes a fiction adult book now about it, it's not going to sell because there's already that one book, you know?
Yeah, that's being held up on a pedestal as like, this is the Mexican immigration story. And then when that's a big part of it too, is like that equality barrier. Like the person that's writing Own Voices isn't getting the same level of exposure, of opportunities that the other book is getting.
Deal. That's a lot of money. 7 figures.
It's a lot of money. And that's a big, I think, part and a big influence in why we started using that Own Voices label to help people find those stories. Because a lot of times you have to actively look. It's hard. These days it's gotten better, but it's hard still to find those stories unless you're like specifically looking for them, or unless publishers are really pushing them, which in some cases they definitely do, which is nice. It's just we're looking for that balancing act. What do you find are some of the positive outcomes that came from the Own Voices term, and then maybe some unexpected negative outcomes? And follow up to the negative outcomes, because we're trying to add a bit more optimism to this, is how do you think we can make those better?
Okay, awesome. So I think the positive is like the clearest of it, right? So it's both bringing more authenticity to writing, but but most importantly, bringing the genuine experience for people who are also experiencing it, right? So bringing a mirror. But one aspect that is negative of Own Voices is that sometimes people may feel that they have to out themselves for their stories to be accepted. Like, obviously, I'm Brazilian, so there's no way that I could be outed as Brazilian. Like, it's something obvious. But I am an out queer person by choice. My family is very accepting. They could not be. And if that weren't the case, I live in a very dangerous country for queer people. There are other countries where it's even more dangerous. There are countries in which being queer is punishable by death. And when we put people, I think especially in the spectrum of queerness, against the wall and say, but is your story on voices? Are you writing from a place of experience? In the sense of, writing queerness, I think it can be dangerous. And I don't really support that. I think that there's a lot of nuance in that discussion. And obviously, just like in other aspects of Own Voices, when you write an Own Voices, just to give my experience, Brazilian characters, that character will have more authenticity. Yes. But this is not something that I have to come out and would endanger me. So I don't know. How do you feel about that?
That's what I would say to the policing of Own Voices. Because a lot of times, again, like people's like racial ethnicity or like cultural ethnicity, a lot of times it's completely safe for them to share that with people and to say that's Own Voices. But I think we do kind of sometimes get that issue where someone will state that a story is Own Voices and they're being policed about which aspects of it are Own Voices. And like you said, that was a very good point. For some people, it's not safe for them to come out, but it's part of healing and expressing themselves for them to be able to write a story that expresses their identity. And they're not necessarily ready to come out, or again, it's not safe for them. And that pressure to have to tell everybody what's going on with you and your label so that people can feel some sort of way or ascribe that label to your story can be really toxic.
Yeah.
I think we've had a lot of conversations about this, so hopefully it's getting a bit better, but I do find that it still comes up, and especially for things also that even go beyond that, like things like regarding mental illness or regarding past trauma, where people are really digging to try and like get these details that it's like, do you actually need that to enjoy the story, or is it enough that someone has said, this is from my experience?
Yeah, especially because sometimes even writing from our own experiences, we can reproduce bad stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
We are not free from writing harmful things that involve our own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
It's which is another aspect that I think we should consider. A lot of times I feel that, okay, so nobody publishes a book with XY marginalizations, and then someone publishes their book with XY marginalization, and then they're expected to be a monolith and talk for all of the group of people that you couldn't possibly, you can do that with anything, even if it's like, there's a reason even twin siblings have different life experiences.
Yeah.
It's because it's different for everyone. So imagine if even people that were born from the same father, mother at the same time, they will have different experiences. Why wouldn't people who have never met each other, that are just part of, a virtual group, like Brazilians or even wider Latinx people, or queer people, gigantic group, or so I think it's a little dangerous when people go to these ones that were published and expect a monolith.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the other side of the policing, right? So there's a side of policing where they're trying to dig at and force people to say, yes, this is my exact experience, or yes, this is my exact identity. And then there's the other side, which is people that are like, that can't be own voices because that's not how I experienced that. Or like, I'm writing like my debut book is about, a Black girl's like Trinidadian Canadian diaspora experience. And it's like somebody else in Toronto that's also Black, that also has Trinidad heritage, is not going to have the exact same experiences. Like there's going to be things that I put in the book where they're going to be like, well, I've never done that. That's never happened.
Exactly.
I've never heard about that. So like, is that really your identity? But that's the whole thing of like own voices. Like it's your own voice. It's not going to be exactly the same.
These discussions we are having, not just you and me necessarily, but like as an industry we are having, they are very important for the acknowledgement of that. And I just think that, we should drop the policing. If an author says its own voices, you don't need to know for exactly what. We have to trust people won't try to, profit from the movement. And they will. Some people will.
Yeah.
But I think it's a small price to pay. Because the thing is, people who don't share marginalizations with the group they are writing about, they are already profiting.
Mm-hmm.
Even without saying its own voices.
Yeah,
exactly. It's already happening. So writers a little more kindly in that sense. If you say its own voices, okay, its own voices. I don't need to know whether you are a witch like your character, or if you just share the fact that you're both Black, or that you're both girls, or that I don't know. Yeah. I don't need to know that. I don't need to know your personal story to enjoy your book and for your book to make a change in my life. So yeah, I think we have to be a little kinder with authors, and especially with POC authors, because the industry is unkind to POC authors, especially, I think.
Yeah. Well, statistically, like if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
just look at like Lee and Loeb puts out statistics every year of like books being published that are from like POC authors, and you can see there's like there's a definite
yeah.
difference, right? And they're in smaller amounts. They're getting slightly better every year, but again, not quite to the level that we would ideally want. And so, yeah, the last thing you kind of want Own Voices authors feeling is that they can't claim the term that was meant to help them because they're worried about being policed and forced to say, okay, yeah, this is me and this is me and this is not me and this is not me. Like, if they're going to claim it, let them claim it and don't
Mm,
get involved in the nitty gritty, because who are you? You're not helping them with that. And you're not helping other people from that marginalization by policing it. You're not doing anything extra. So
I agree.
hopefully I think people are getting better the more people speak about it. And the
Mhm.
more people kind of learn from that, the more they're stopping doing that, which is really helpful and really hopeful for the industry as a whole in that case when it comes to that, which is really nice. But yeah, for the positives for Own Voices, like the more we're using the term, or the more we're getting to see those stories come out, and the more I think people are kind of starting to understand the reason that we're wanting to prioritize these stories. Anything like positive or uplifting that you can say to Own Voices writers or people who are considering writing an Own Voices story, what would you say?
Oh, that's great. Do it. Do it. Write it, because you will never know the value of someone else reading your own voice's story and identifying with it until it happens. And when it does, it's absolutely magical. It's something that you will never forget. Some of the reactions I've gotten over the years are things that have, made me keep going when things got really tough, because it will be tough. Even when you're not writing from your marginalizations, writing does get hard sometimes in every possible aspect and in every possible stage. So you need those moments to hold on to. I think we have to ask the question of, why are we writing? And if you are writing for yourself, you owe it to yourself to, at some point at your own time, to let yourself heal through writing. And if you are writing for others, you owe it to others to give them this mirror. And for people that don't share the marginalization, to understand better and normalize your experience. Because some people, they're not bigots by choice. They have never been exposed to a different reality. So I think it's worth it. There are a lot of things that are not perfect yet on this, but it's so worth it. I love writing on voices. I have written a lot of things that weren't on voices until I finally got to a point where I could write my experiences, and it's been great.
Wonderful. That's really good. I like that. That was very uplifting. I'm going to add on to that and also say, if you are considering Own Voices, your story is Own Voices enough. Because I find this comes up a lot with people. They wonder if, oh, am I this enough or am I that enough to claim Own Voices? And you are enough. If you're already wondering if you're enough, it's because you are. Whatever story is yours to claim, you should feel comfortable putting that out in the world. You shouldn't feel worried about being policed about being enough, because you are on your own, and put your story out there. And in the same vein, if you don't feel that you want to claim Own Voices for a story, you want to write about some different aspect, you don't want to necessarily do an Own Voices narrative, that's okay too. I feel like a lot of people that are marginalized also can sometimes feel a pressure to write Own Voices, and you don't have to. Write whatever you want, whether you want to write Own Voices or not. Whatever you decide to write is enough, and it's your story. So put it out there.
Yay!
And I'll let Gabby tell you all about her awesome projects and socials, etc., which I will link all of those below.
Thank you. So I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm also a language coach. So I work helping people achieve their language dreams for whichever language. I am also an ESL teacher, specialized teacher of English as second language. And I offer webinars monthly for writers.
Perfect. So exciting. Thank you so much for chatting with me and chatting with the audience. And of course, because this is in conversation, I always invite you to join the conversation. Whatever thoughts you have about Own Voices stories, ones that you've read that you've loved, whether you're writing any on your own, how Own Voices stories have impacted you, please feel free to join the conversation in the comments and add to that. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to me already, please subscribe, and also subscribe to Gabby's channel. And thank you so much for watching this video. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.